What's up, everybody? Josh Bennett with College Funding Hero. In this video, we're going to talk about two of the main tax-advantaged accounts to save for college. So when saving for college, everybody wants to save on taxes as well. It's kind of a no-brainer. So in this video, we're going to look at those two main different types of account, which are the 529 plan and the Coverdell ESA. So who wouldn't want to save on taxes while trying to save for college? I mean, let's be real. As we talk about often, college is expensive, and anything that we can do to minimize the overall impact of paying for college, the better. And getting to save a little bit of money on taxes while saving for college, that's a win-win, right? So there's two main accounts to actually save for college in a tax-efficient way, and that's the Coverdell ESA and the 529 plan. So these are two of the main accounts that are kind of earmarked specifically for education. So we're going to look at what some of the pros and cons of each are and kind of how they differ. So the Coverdell ESA is one of the more flexible tax advantage accounts because it operates sort of like a brokerage account where it can be used for just traditional education, higher education, etc. So it's basically in the student's name with the parent as a custodian, and it's earmarked again for education expenses. So any money that comes out of that Coverdell ESA has to be used for education purposes. Otherwise, you can get a bevy of tax penalties and things like that. But while it's in the Coverdell ESA, all of that grows tax-free. So as long as you save in that account, invest it, then it grows. Any of that money then is tax-free. That also applies for the 529. So any money that you put into a 529 account, you can put the money in, it grows tax-free, and then on the outside, when you take that money out, as long as it's used for education purposes, it remains tax-free. So you can basically take that money out, use it for education without having to pay taxes on that growth. Both of those are really great benefit. So where the Coverdell ESA differs a little bit is because it works like a traditional brokerage account, you can invest in whatever you want in there. So really, the world is your oyster. So I mean, for example, you can open a Coverdell ESA at a place like Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade, places like where you can open just a traditional brokerage account. You can also open a Coverdell ESA and sort of invest in whatever you want to grow that money. So you can keep costs really low, you can invest efficiently. So there's a lot of benefits there. Downside of Coverdell ESA is you have only a $2,000 contribution limit. So when you're talking about some college campuses costing $250,000 plus in terms of college tuition, $2,000 a year, not really going to cut it in terms of paying for college education, unless you just get really lucky on the investments, which, let's be honest, is highly unlikely to get that lucky. But so with the Coverdell ESA, you're going to be a little limited in terms of contribution, especially if you send your kid to like a private high school where you're paying from the Coverdell ESA as well. Again, it's going to limit your overall impact towards college. Nice thing is you can still save tax-free, and you can really grow that nest egg as much as possible over, say, an 18-year time frame for a new child. So that's a good option. The 529 plan, where it benefits is you really get much higher contribution limit. So for example, with the 529 plan, you can actually contribute upwards of like $150,000 if you do it right, because you can essentially lump 5 years worth of contributions all together at the same time. And basically it's done around parent gifting rules. So for example, for estate tax purposes, you're able to gift $15,000 a year to another person tax-free. So how the 529 works is you can basically do that same gifting limit directly into a 529, but you can stack them all together in 1 year. So it'd basically be $15,000 per parent. And if you do duplicate that, one for each parent, that's $30,000 for 5 years, $150,000. So you have a huge contribution limit with a 529. All that money again can grow tax-free. Downside of 529 is that these accounts are run from state by state. So for example, they sort of operate like a pension plan where basically you open a 529 plan with the state, then you have sort of a few limited options in terms of what you can invest in. So they may be like conservative, moderate, aggressive, etc. So you don't really have much flexibility in terms of the investment options within that 529 plan. So benefits are, again, you get the tax benefits, You get high contribution limits. Downside is you don't get much investment flexibility with a 529 plan. Coverdell ESA, you get the pro of the investment flexibility, but you get the downside of the contribution limit. 529 is sort of the opposite. So neither account is perfect, but both you get the tax advantage benefits from either account. Something to consider with both of these accounts, though, is you do have to use them for educational purposes. So if you're, for example, starting to save early and you're putting a lot of money into one of these accounts, and say your student gets a full ride scholarship, you want to understand if that can be used for any other purposes besides education, which in this case, no, it can't. And for example, with the Coverdell ESA, you have to have that money out by the age of 30. So you're going to actually be a little limited in how long they can even stay. So for example, if like a 529 plan, you want to then use that money for master's degrees or something like that, you can still do it. But if you wait until after the age of 30, then you can use that with 529, but Coverdell ESA, you're a little screwed. So you want to be careful with how you use that, because if you take that money out for anything other than education purposes, then you could get hit with a tax penalty and you could get hit with taxes as well. So neither of which is fun to pay for. So you want to make sure you're using these accounts for their intended purposes and within the realms and staying within the rules of the game. So before you distribute any money for education, make sure you know, is this qualified expense? So does this count under whichever account I open, whether 529 or Coverdell, like does this count as a qualified expense? And am I using the right account for my goals with college funding? So you really want to determine that well ahead of actually contributing to these accounts, because once the money's in there, it's in there and has to be used for education. So make sure you have your ducks in a row before actually opening one of these accounts and contributing to them. And if you have any more questions or thoughts around which type of account might be right for you, make sure you check out our resources at the website below, but also subscribe to the channel, because we try to put out a lot of valuable content to help give you some clarity around college funding. Obviously, it's a very complex topic, and we want to make sure that we are making college a reality for as many families as possible. So make sure you subscribe to the channel below and comment if you have any questions. Cheers.